Hey there, night owls. Welcome to the Voice of Darkness. I'm thrilled you've joined me on this journey into the unknown. Before we dive in, let me know, where in the world are you tuning in from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see just how far our darkness reaches. Chapter 1, Into Brackenwood. I had never heard of Brackenwood before I applied for that night shift pizza run. By day, it was nothing more than a scattering of neat hedgerows, tidy cottages, and a sleepy high street that seemed almost unwilling to rouse itself before noon. I pictured a friendly village full of warm hearths and kindly folks. But that was before I rolled in under the old gas lamps, the glow too weak to banish the inky shadows pooling in every doorway. My manager, Mr. Harper, was waiting at the shop's back entrance, an austere figure in a threadbare jacket that had seen better winters. He didn't offer a greeting, only a curt nod as he handed me a battered leather satchel and 4 laminated cards, each inscribed with a single rule. His eyes, cold and unreadable, met mine for a heartbeat before he turned away. "Stick to these," he said in a low voice that rumbled like distant thunder. "Obey them, and you'll make it back safe. Break them, and you won't see morning." My heart hammered as I slung the satchel over my shoulder. The night air tasted of damp earth and something metallic I couldn't place. The shop door thudded behind me, and the comforting hum of the refrigerator motors died away. There was only silence, an expectant, watchful hush that pressed on my eardrums. My first delivery ticked anxiously on the app, a small bungalow at the end of Willow Lane. I kicked the moped to life, its engine sputtering before settling into a steady rumble that sounded far too loud in the stillness. As I set off, the 4 rules weighed in my mind like bricks. Never meet a strange figure's eyes. Refuse any order received at exactly 2 in the morning. Do not step over a customer's doorstep. And never, ever look back on the return journey. I reminded myself that these were just precautions, Mr. Harper's idea of helping a new recruit stay safe. Yet every flicker of movement in the periphery, every echo of footsteps on the cobbles, made me question whether Brackenwood was as innocent as it seemed. By the time I reached the edge of town, the lamplit houses felt less like welcoming homes and more like silent sentinels, watching me pass through their gates into the unknown. Chapter 2, The 4 Edicts. Back under the harsh fluorescence of the pizzeria kitchen, Mr. Harper beckoned me to the scuffed linoleum floor. He placed 4 laminated cards on the counter, their surfaces scuffed and smeared with grease. "These are your edicts," he said without preamble, voice flat and measured. "Memorize them. Honor them. They're the difference between tonight's pay and a fate far worse." I lifted the first card. "Rule 1. Never meet a strange figure's eyes on the road." His gaze locked onto mine. "Out there, shadows come alive," he murmured. "If you look at them, they know you've seen. And once they know, they follow." I felt a shiver creep up my spine. I imagined ghostly shapes prowling empty lanes, waiting for the curious or the careless to challenge them with a glance. The second card read, "Rule 2. At 2 o'clock exactly, refuse every order." Mr. Harper tapped the digital clock behind him, its red digits hovering at 1:59. "Every night without fail, the app pings with requests that aren't quite human. You cancel at 2 o'clock, or the act binds you to them." His knuckles whitened around the card's edge. "If you slip even a second late, well, they'll trick you into deliveries you can never finish." I swallowed hard and picked up the third. "Rule 3. Do not step over a customer's doorstep when beckoned inside." He leaned close enough to smell stale tobacco. "Hospitality is a trap. A friendly smile, a beckoning finger, that's all it takes. Cross that threshold, and no one comes looking for you." My pulse hammered. A simple doorstep had never felt so forbidding. Finally, "Rule 4. On your return, if you hear footsteps or a whisper behind you, do not look back." He folded his arms, his eyes never leaving mine. "Never. Once you do, you're trapped in the night forever." The words echoed like a curse in the empty kitchen. He slid the cards toward me. The cook in the corner hummed obliviously, unaware of the weight pressed upon me. I nodded, each rule settling in my mind like stones. Outside, the lamplight beckoned, and with it, the promise of peril, and a darkness that obeyed its own rules. Chapter 3: A Glimpse in the Fog. My first real test came less than 10 minutes into my shift. The satchel on my shoulder felt unnaturally heavy as I wheeled the moped down Brackenwood's high street. The gas lamps cast pale circles of light on the cobbles, but beyond their glow the night was thick with fog, like wet wool draping every house and hedge. I checked the GPS. Maple Cottage, Willow Lane, 0.3 miles. My breath puffed in front of me as I threaded between shuttered shop fronts. Every creak of a sign swinging in the breeze sounded amplified in the stillness. Then, halfway there, I saw it, a tall, angular shape perched on the pavement ahead, motionless as a statue. My heart thudded. The figure's skin, what little I could see, was so pale it almost glowed. Its head cocked slightly, as if listening. Its eyes, I imagined, were dark and bottomless. I remembered Rule 1, never meet a strange figure's eyes on the road. I forced my gaze downward, fixing on a single crack between cobblestones. 1, 2, 3 steps at a time. I felt its presence at my shoulder, just beyond the circle of lamplight, but I did not look. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my pulse and my trembling fingers on the moped's throttle. At last I passed. The silhouette did not move, nor did it call out, but I sensed it watching, as though I had broken some unspoken compact by seeing it at all. I paused at the gate of Maple Cottage, the gravel crunching under my boots louder than any shout. A lantern glowed through frosted glass by the front door. I lifted the satchel and rang the bell. No answer. I knocked again, still nothing. Dread pulled in my stomach. I peered through the frosty pane, but all I saw was empty hallway. I set the pizzas on the doorstep and dropped a quick knock-knock on the doorframe. My reflection in the glass stared back at me, eyes wide, pale with shock. I backed away swiftly, careful not to look over my shoulder. Halfway back to the moped, the fog thickened, swallowing the lamplight behind me. My pulse hammered in my ears as I urged the engine to life, knees shaking. The road stretched ahead, empty and silent, yet I could not shake the feeling that something followed just out of sight. Chapter 4: The Witching Hour Call. The app buzzed like a warning bell at 1:47 a.m. 6 margaritas, destination, the old mill by the river. My fingers hovered over the throttle as the coordinates blinked on the screen. I'd memorized Mr. Harper's Rule 2, at 2 o'clock exactly, refuse every order. I kicked the moped into gear and shot down the high street, fog curling around the lamppost like smoke. Beyond the last cottage, a narrow lane led to the mill, its broken wheel creaking in the darkness. The river's surface was so still it reflected the moon like cracked glass. I parked beside a sluice gate and grabbed the satchel. The door to the mill stood slightly ajar, ancient wood swollen by damp. I nudged it open, and a cold draft slammed it back with a hollow groan. Inside, shafts of moonlight fell through missing boards, dust motes dancing in silent arcs. I set the pizzas on a splintered crate. "Delivery," I called, voice small under the vaulted rafters. No answer. I glanced at my watch, 1:59. 40 seconds until 2. My pulse thudded as if counting down. The app pinged again, another request for 3 vegan specials. My eyes flicked to the screen, then to the dark interior of the mill. If I accepted these orders past 2, I'd be bound to them forever, Mr. Harper had warned. Seconds ticked by. The ancient wheel outside turned with a slow sigh, as though stirred by an unseen hand. My throat tightened. I tapped, cancel, at precisely 2 o'clock. The screen flashed white, then went black. Instantly, the wheel stopped, and the draft ceased. The mill fell silent, as if it had been holding its breath. I exhaled, trembling. Gripping the satchel, I bolted for the moped. the gravel crunched underfoot, each step echoing like thunder. I dared not look back. Once astride, the engine roared to life. I sped away, the river's dead reflections slipping behind me. Back on the high street, the lamps seemed dimmer, the fog thicker. My heart pounded, but relief washed over me. I had survived the witching hour, at least until tomorrow night. Yet as I rounded the corner toward the pizzeria, I couldn't shake the feeling that in those few moments inside the mill, something had watched me, waiting for me to fail. Chapter 5. The Porch of Mrs. Groves. The next stop brought me to the edge of Brackenwood, where the high hedges of Willow Lane gave way to a narrow drive lined with gnarled oaks. In the pale glow of my headlamp, I made out Mrs. Groves's cottage perched at the end, its white clapboards bleached almost silver in the mist. A single lantern swung gently beside the front door, casting long, wavering shadows across the porch. I lifted the satchel and walked up the creaking wooden steps. The air was unnaturally still, as though the world held its breath. I rang the bell once. It tolled hollowly through the fog. After a moment, the lantern snapped brighter, and the door eased open with a soft groan. Inside stood Mrs. Groves herself, an elderly woman draped in a shawl of deep burgundy. Her face was lined, but her eyes sparkled with unnerving intensity. She smiled and inclined her head, as though welcoming a cherished guest. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice a hushed melody that seemed to drift on the air. I set the pizzas on a small table just inside the threshold. The cottage was warm and smelled of cinnamon and old wood. I could see a staircase curling upward into darkness, and paintings of children lined the walls, each portrait meticulous, each child's gaze haunting. Then Mrs. Groves beckoned. Her bony finger curled through the doorway, inviting me further inside. Her smile widened, revealing teeth far too perfect. My pulse stuttered. I remembered Rule 3, do not step over a customer's doorstep when beckoned inside. I began, but she tilted her head, voice soft as moth wings. "Please come in. It's cold tonight." I swallowed, every instinct screaming. With a polite cough, I shook my head. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Groves, but I can't come in." I backed toward the door, careful not to cross the threshold. Her lantern flickered, and for a heartbeat her eyes went dark, hollow, bottomless. Then she nodded, as if relieved. "Of course. Thank you for the delivery." I stepped back onto the porch, the door closing behind me with a muted click. The warmth evaporated instantly, replaced by the chill mist. My heart pounded as I descended the steps, glancing once at the shuttered windows before turning away. As I mounted the moped and rode off, the lantern's glow receded until it was nothing more than a pinprick in the fog. I exhaled, shaken but triumphant. I had resisted the lure of hospitality, and lived to tell the tale, at least for now. Chapter 6. Echoes on the Return. The moon had dipped low by the time I finished my final delivery, and the village lay quiet beneath a shuttered sky. I turned the moped onto Willow Lane, its narrow ribbon of tarmac bordered by ancient oaks whose twisted branches formed a half-lit tunnel. Every pedal of the wheel seemed to echo louder here, as though the trees themselves listened for the slightest sound. Halfway down the lane, the air shifted. A soft crunch of gravel sounded behind me, distinct from my own tires. My pulse spiked. I remembered Mr. Harper's Rule 4, if you hear footsteps or a whisper behind you, do not look back. Still, the sound persisted, a measured step, then another, matching my pace. I gripped the handlebars tighter, willing the moped to speed up. The trees flickered past in ghostly strobe, lamps overhead dimmer now, as if reluctant to shine. Footsteps remained, closer, heavier. A voice, hushed but insistent, breathed my name. "Come back, come back!" It curled around me like a living thing. Fear burned along my spine. My rational mind fought the urge to twist around, to confirm what, or who, might be there. But I clenched my teeth and kept my eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Don't look!" I whispered to myself, heart hammering in my ears. The footsteps stuttered, then resumed in slow pursuit. The lane opened onto the high street as the lamps brightened in sudden relief. Behind me, the footsteps stopped as abruptly as they had begun. The hush returned, pressing against my neck like water. I dared not glance over my shoulder until I reached the safety of the pizzeria's doorway. I killed the engine and exhaled in a single, shuddering breath. The shop's warm light spilled onto the pavement, banishing the shadows that had stalked me. Inside, Mr. Harper glanced up from the counter. "Back already?" he asked, voice cool. I handed him the empty satchel wordlessly, every nerve still taut. He nodded once, eyes grave. "Well done," he said, and offered me a steaming cup of tea. As I sipped the bitter warmth, I realized I had obeyed the final rule, and survived. But as the dawn threatened beyond the windows, I couldn't shake the certainty that something had trailed me through Willow Lane, waiting for me to look back. Chapter 7: Dawn in the Shop. I pushed open the pizzeria's door at first light, the bell's chime echoing strangely in the empty dining room. The fluorescent bulbs flickered on overhead, revealing the stainless steel counter streaked with grease and the rows of upside-down pizza pans hanging on the wall. The night's adrenaline still thrummed in my veins, and for a moment the tepid brightness felt almost as unsettling as the darkness outside. Behind the counter, Mr. Harper stood polishing a shot glass at the espresso machine, his silhouette rigid and practiced. He glanced up without expression. "Back in one piece," he observed, setting the glass down and folding his arms. His tone held neither praise nor reproach, only the calm appraisal of a man accustomed to measuring risks and outcomes. I nodded and slid the satchel onto the counter. It landed with a muted thud that sounded louder than expected. "You handled the lane well," he said, eyes flicking to the empty bag. "That's 4 rules down, 1 night survived." He passed me a chipped mug of strong tea, steam curling like a pale ghost. I wrapped my hands around its warmth. As I sipped, I surveyed the shop, the dough hooks idle in their trough, the oven's interior cold and dark, the floor tiles flecked with yesterday's crumbs. By day, this place would hum with families grabbing slices before work, friends sharing pepperoni and laughter. But at dawn, it was a hushed vessel holding the residue of the witching hour. "Nightmares?" he asked quietly. I managed a weak smile. "Just echoes." I placed the mug down, and felt its heat soak into my palm. Outside, the sky turned pale pink, the first birds breaking silence with hesitant song. He nodded, as if he'd anticipated my answer. "Rest while you can. We start again at 8. He tapped the laminated cards still tucked in my pocket. "Tomorrow night you'll know what to expect. Keep your guard." I stood, the mug now empty and cool. I tasted something bittersweet in the silence, relief mixed with apprehension. Brackenwood by day was innocent enough, but I knew its true face waited in the shadows. I headed to the back room to catch a few hours' sleep, the mug's faint stain on the counter the only proof I'd ever been here. In the quiet dawn, I let my racing heart slow, already bracing for the next night's run. Chapter 8: Bound by Shadows. Sunlight crept over Brackenwood's rooftops, gilding the shutters with hesitant gold. By day, the village breathed like an innocent child, unaware of the terrors that crept through its lanes at night. I stood on the threshold of the pizzeria, the laminated cards heavy in my pocket, and watched the world shift from muted gray to vibrant color. My manager, Mr. Harper, joined me in the doorway, his expression unreadable beneath the warm glow. "You made it through your first week," he noted, voice low. "Few last this long." He paused, as though measuring my resolve. "But the rules don't end here. They evolve." I swallowed, fingers tightening around the cards. I had learned to never meet a strange figure's eyes, to refuse the witching hour orders at 2, to resist every beckoning doorstep, and to never look back on my return. Those rules had saved me so far, but each night had chipped away at my sense of safety. "Tonight," he said, You'll deliver to a place where the boundary between our world and theirs is thinnest. And if you break any rule, you won't just lose your way home." He slipped a fifth card into my palm, its surface blank. "This is for you to fill in." My heart pounded. A new edict, unscripted, waiting for me to learn its lesson. I realized then that the rules were never static. They were written in the shadows, shifting with each heartbeat of the night. I mounted the moped one last time, the engines hummed like a whisper in my ear. The village looked different now. The hedges seemed to lean in closer, the lampposts flickered with secret awareness, and the fog curled at the edges of sight. I thought of every narrow escape, every glimpse of pale skin in the lamplight, every whispered attempt to draw me back. As I crossed the high street, the first order chimed on my phone, an address I'd never seen, on a road that didn't exist by daylight. I took a breath and set off, the blank card fluttering in my pocket like a ticking promise. Dawn would come again, but when I returned, I would carry with me new knowledge, written not in ink, but in the echoes of the night. Brackenwood by day might seem peaceful, but by night it bound you in its web. And now, with every delivery, I was more entangled than ever.